Hello, listeners. This is F. Molina, and we have another episode of the F and Sonny Show. And today we are joined by Judge Ysmael Fonseca, the District Court Judge of the 476th District Court of Texas. And he's also running for the 13th Court of Appeals, Place 4, right?
Yes, you did. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So let's start off by talking about like who you are. Why you're currently a district court judge, but how did you get there? Who are you?
Well, I was born in Wesco, raised in here in Edinburgh, and ended up going to law school and going away for college. I wanted to get away, and I had that opportunity. But eventually, my family's all here, and decided to just come back and to practice law. And I've been practicing since 2009, so we're going on 15 years.
Oh, wow.
I've been practicing law. And I first got tapped for a judicial position 5 years ago, 2019, when the governor appointed me to the 464th District Court at that time.
Did you ever see yourself becoming a judge or the way we pronounce it down here, el juez, right?
Not at all. I didn't want to deal with politics. I didn't realize when I became a lawyer how much politics plays in law, a role in the legal system, until I became a lawyer. And all I wanted to do, I just wanted to practice. So when I first got out of law school, I clerked for Judge Crane in federal court, which is very different, right? Because
9 days.
And I can tell people politics doesn't really play much of a role at all, really. I never felt that way. So, and it's more academic and a bit of a nerd myself. So that was kind of a good fit. But I wanted to just be away from chambers and sitting next to a judge to actually being in front of the judge. And that's when I started practicing as a litigator. And I started working with my former firm. And I was happy. I was just a regular lawyer. Didn't have to deal with the politics because the main partners at the firm were the ones that dealt with all that. Yeah. I just got a case and I worked it, and that's all. And I love doing that. And it wasn't until Rudy Delgado was indicted back in 2019. No, he was indicted before then, 2018, I think, and that he was convicted in 2019 when he actually was on the Court of Appeals. That the Jaime Tijerina, who had been appointed to the 464th, moved to the 13th Court of Appeals by appointment by the governor, and then there was an opening. And for people that know politics, local politics, Jaime Tijerina was one of the people that the governor would go to fill appointments. And there was also Ernie Aliceda. He's also another great lawyer and also former judge. He didn't want to be involved in this whole appointment process anymore, from my understanding. So there was really nobody else to kind of fill that appointment. And one of my partners, Frank Sabo, said, "Hey, why don't you just throw your hat in?" I said, "I don't know the governor. I don't do politics." He said, "But you do a good job." And I said, "Well, I know that we need to do better, especially after the conviction of that former judge, and I can't say I've never complained. I did." So it was an opportunity to step up and say, "Okay, I can do this, and I think I can show people how things should be done." And so I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot." And 5 years later, I'm still doing this.
So like you had that voice like in you, like I'm complaining all the time on the system being like a certain way. You could either not do anything or you could do something, and you actually did. You put your hat in.
Right.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can complain, but you can complain all you want, but how are you actually going to make a difference and make a change? And at that point, my second child, my oldest son, had been just born. He was actually a week or 2 weeks old when I took office in the 464th. My wife's the trooper here because she was able to deal with that transition of me leaving practice and then going into not just being a judge, but also the politics behind it. But yeah, my whole life philosophy changed when I started having kids. And if I wanted things to be better for them, well, I need to make sure that they're actually better. And I was in this unique position where this opportunity arose where I could actually do something. And I tell people courts are so important. Judges can take your property away. They can take your kids away. They can take your freedom away. Yeah. And we need to make sure that those that have that power are actually exercising the power in the rule of law, following the rule of law. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen all the time.
At least for me, my philosophy has always been that we want people on the bench that have good hearts. And I mean, I've had cases against you, and the one feeling that I've always gotten is when I know you were on it as a defense lawyer, I was like, okay, this guy plays by the book. There's not going to be any shadiness. We're going to go through the process, and we're both going to be professional about it. And that's such a good feeling for another lawyer to have that like reputation.
It's, the golden rule, treat others as you wish to be treated. That should spill over into litigation. Not because we have this adversarial system doesn't mean that we have to be jerks with each other. Yeah. We have rules, we have process that guide how we do things. And that doesn't mean that I have to be hiding the ball or not being upfront with you. And if there's some advice to give young lawyers, that's it right there. Mm-hmm. Civility. In fact, recently in the last couple of years, they amended the lawyer's creed to add civility. You're going to be civil to each other. That's part of the oath you take as a new lawyer.
It's kind of weird that they had to add that, right?
It's actually kind of sad. It gives you, it shows you what our legal community has turned into. Yeah, where we're fighting with each other, and I'm glad to hear that lawyers think I'm taking that on. Some other lawyers don't like that, but it's precisely because they don't want to follow the rules, procedures. They're used to getting favors. One of the things I've railed about since I got into this political game has been compadrismo and nepotism.
The compadre system, yeah.
So when I became a lawyer, I didn't know anybody that was a lawyer. My dad had a small car lot. My mom was a migrant clerk worker in one of our local schools. So they didn't have connections, which is how a lot of things work, unfortunately. So it was through hard work and doing interviews and sending resumes that I got every job that I've gotten. Not because I knew of someone, but a lot of people don't do that. They get somewhere because of how they're connected to the system. And in my court, I don't care who you are. I don't care what position you hold outside of the courtroom. I don't care who you know. We have several. We have senators and state representatives and mayors and former judges and former DAs and that are practicing, and they're going to be treated the same as you are in my courtroom. Not because you hold some title or held some position. You're going to be favored, and if a ruling goes against you, well, that's just how it is.
That's the process, right?
That's the process.
Don't like it, appeal it, right?
Right. and I don't mind. And I've had some lawyers say, well, this is going to be an appealable error. That's your right. I'm doing what I think the law says, or what I think it should do. There's another court if you want to take it up with them. And
if you want to take it up with that other court, well, you are leaving the district court position in January, right?
December 31st.
December 31st, right. But you're running to be like an appellate judge, right?
Right.
So you're going to be one of those people that are looking at some of the other trial court's orders and decisions and being that referee. Did they do it right? Did they do it wrong?
Right.
Right. Can you explain to people like what does an appellate court of justice do? What's the
So the appeals court looks at what happens in the trial court, where you go, the first court that you go to. And if the decision doesn't go your way, you have the opportunity to appeal it and ask the Court of Appeals to take a look and make sure that the trial court judge did apply the law as it should have been and consider what should have been. And I like the fact that we have this system because it has you have a safeguard. You have somebody else that can go back and take a look at what happened to make sure that we really did apply the law properly. I like that as a trial court judge. I think if lawyers think I'm offended because you bring up an appeal, it's like, no, that's your right. And I appreciate that. And if I were to do something wrong, and I must say, in my now 3 years of being a judge, I've been partially reversed only once. And I've been upheld every other time. That I know what it is that needs to be done. Part of the reason that I'm running for the Court of Appeals is because, unfortunately, our Court of Appeals has rubber stamped a lot of bad decisions. Our court has not had enough judges on the bench that are independent of the local courts, and that's kind of what I've been telling people. You cannot have a Court of Appeals that rubber stamps what happens at the trial court level because of the compadrismo and because you know someone.
That stuff, yeah.
The Court of Appeals has to be independent, and it has to look at things wholly separated from what happens at the trial court level without having any allegiances. And because that's the only way that you're actually going to have justice. Yeah. So
how did you get into Notre Dame, and what made you want to go to Notre Dame?
I didn't want to go to Notre Dame.
Wow.
That was not on the top of my list. I wanted to go to the Ivy League schools. I got into UPenn. I think I got waitlisted at Princeton. But my mom said she wanted me to go to good Catholic school. So she said, how about you apply to Notre Dame? And I'm like, it's in Indiana. I mean, I did not want to go to Indiana.
It's cold.
It's cold. It's close to Chicago, so it's not that bad. But I did it just because my mom said, here, apply to this one school. So I did. But then I visited, and then when I looked at my values and what would be the next best step for me, and decided Notre Dame was a better fit than UPenn. Being in Philadelphia was not something I was looking forward to. So, and like I said, my faith is very important to me. So having a place where I'm going to be able to build on that as well, not just academically, but personally as well. Yeah. So that's how I ended up going to Notre Dame. And I loved it so much that when it came time to go to law school, I only wanted to go to Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, yeah.
And a lot of people don't know this, but I didn't get in the first time I applied. I didn't get in the second time I applied. I applied 3 times to get into Notre Dame.
Wow.
I took a 3-year hiatus between law school and undergrad. I worked for the Justice Department at that time in Washington, D.C., because I wanted to know what kind of lawyer do I want to be. Yeah. I have such respect for the law. People ask me sometimes, well, why did you become a lawyer? And it's because, so my dad is a Cuban immigrant, and I grew up knowing about how sacred our democracy is. He held it in such high regard. He and his family fled Cuba in '59 after Castro took over. So that was always a part of the discussion of what the beauty of our system. So I had such a love for the Constitution, for our rights, and I also loved the theatrics of the courtroom. I was drawn to that. I don't know. Maybe I should have been a thespian.
Thespian, yeah. The thespian life or petroleum engineering. Those would have been the 2 good ones.
Right. But I put the 2 together. I said, I'll be a litigator. So that's what drew me to the law. But I didn't know what type of law to do. So I took some time off between undergrad and law school, and that's when I knew I did not want to do criminal law. I was the victim liaison for human trafficking victims in the Justice Department, and it was just so emotionally draining. I said, I don't know if I can do criminal law, and even though I believe in and having defense attorneys for people who are accused, I also didn't see myself in that role.
Yeah, it could take a mental toll just
It does.
seeing the dark places of society where people go about their daily lives, not wanting to know or even tell themselves that stuff like that's really going
Right.
on. It's I can see that.
So that's kind of where I did it. You know what? I'm not going to do criminal law, but yeah. So that's what I went to law school. But so in that time period is when I kept applying, wanted to go back to Notre Dame, and
So you're one of those people that never takes no for an answer.
no,
You instead of when doors close, you'll
find another one.
That's not acceptable. That's awesome.
Yeah, you have to.
That's awesome.
And coming from a background where nothing's given to me, I've had to work for it. Yeah. Well, you have to, right? You have to learn how to find a way in which to get what you want and advance your career. And for me, Notre Dame was what I wanted because I loved the place. I knew the place, and I knew there was a high the type of opportunities that I'd get because of Notre Dame. And actually, Judge Crane will tell you, I've been the only non-UT grad he's hired as a law clerk because Notre Dame kind of stood out for him. So that kind of opened up a door in that regard, right?
Well, that kind of like brings me to my next question. Like, you're from the Valley, you go to Notre Dame, and then you graduate from law school, and you got some decisions to make.
Yeah.
Do I go live somewhere else that's preferably cooler, nicer climate, or do I go back home where like 90% of the people don't even know where it is on a map? What made you come back?
This is home. This is home. By that point, I'd already lived in Indiana, close to Chicago. I'd go to Chicago quite often, frequently. I lived in D.C. for a couple of years as well. I love D.C. It's a great town, but it's not really a place where you want to raise a family. So I figured if I want to raise a family, that's also part of my life goals. It wasn't just to build a career, but also wanted to have a family. The best way to do that is by doing it here. Being close to family, so and ended up being a good choice because that's where I met my wife.
Some people think like lawyers and judges come from really prestigious like backgrounds, like everyone is an offspring of the Kennedy family or something like that. Do you come from like a prestigious background, well off, or
no?
What?
No. My mom was a migrant clerk for migrant workers at one of our local schools here in Edinburgh. And my dad had a used car lot. So neither of them finished college. They both started, but they didn't finish college. So they did everything they could. I know they made quite a bit of sacrifices so that my sisters and I could go to college. And actually just 2 years ago, all three of us, my sisters and I, my parents could say that the three of us got not just a college degree, but we got another degree after that. So all of us have had either a master's degree or a professional degree, and both of them are now working on their PhDs. So
wow, so that's a huge hats off like to your parents, and is that something you typically see? Because I think it's like a beautiful thing when there's people that like migrate to the U.S. and then they have nothing, or parents that come from nothing, and you could tell that they're living just horrible lives, like hard lives, working maid jobs, but it seems like their efforts go a long way, that they sacrifice all that because they see their children as like doing like something more,
right.
And that is just hats off like to your parents to be able to sacrifice, and not just what you through it, but your siblings.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you got two sisters?
Two sisters. Yeah.
Were you the first one to
I was
graduate?
the first one. Yeah.
Oh, so okay. So you had all the pressure.
I set the tone.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, are they way younger than you, or?
So my sister Ismar, she's a year younger than I am, and then Anna is 5 years younger. So there's a little break. So I was the oldest. I was oldest in the house, and set the tone. I had to, and that was kind of the pressure that was put on me, and it was expected of me. So like I said, so yeah, my dad is an immigrant. My mom's from El Paso. She's not, but
and as a kid, do you recall being able to recognize that? Like,
oh yeah, because my dad always talked about. I mean, we always talk about the day Castro would die. and when are people going to go back? And I mean, there's nothing left, unfortunately. So what's the good in going back? But yeah, that's a constant, conversation in the Cuban diaspora. Is talking about, the days gone by and whether that's ever going to come back. And even though my dad loved the United States, he always had that in his heart, the idea of Cuba being what it used to be and being an open society where he could go and take his family. So
your philosophy of like not taking no for an answer and like knocking down doors, I think I now know like where it comes from. Like your dad coming from Cuba and going through that whole experience. I mean, that is, if to have that philosophy with you, knowing at your hardest, most difficult time, no matter what case you're handling, to say, you know what, I'm better off than my dad was.
Right.
That is great encouragement to have, knowing that you're standing on those like shoulders.
Because
that's awesome.
I know I'll have a roof over my head. I know my kids will have their next meal. So once you cover that, now you really have to focus on, what's next? Because you need to move past that, and you got to make sure we focus on your values. We focus on their faith, making sure that what I'm doing personally is actually going to make a difference. And not to bring it back to my race or with politics, but that is the main focus. That's my drive.
That's your drive.
Doing this, and like I've told people, I'm not going to go away.
Knowing your whole story now, I don't want you to go away. I mean, knowing your background, you're a common person, and your story and your background. I mean, you're one of us basically, and that's
it kind of gets lost, right? When you get in politics and people see you like you're, the governor appointed him. So he knows the governor. Or now he's wearing a black robe and he's kind of sitting up on that bench. It doesn't help because it elevates you. But I like to say, it's not an elevation of me, but it's a representation of what I do. When people say, your honor, I like to remember when people say that, just to myself. I was not saying it out loud, but when people call me your honor, I actually think to myself, it's my honor to be here. I mean, it's your honor. Yes, it's my honor to be here. It's something that I've been, a blessing, an opportunity that I've been given. You're not calling me your honor because out of respect for the court, but not to elevate me, but as a reminder of the importance of what I do. So I use that as a constant reminder on the bench when people say that as to how important it is for me to be doing a good job.
When I go to the polls to go vote, right? At least before I was a lawyer, I really didn't care about who was running for judge. To tell you the truth, I would just vote based on, do I like their name or does their name sit with me? How important are judicial races, and why should people even care about who sits like as a judge?
They're extremely important. I've been telling people about. So you like to pick for president, right? You gotta. A lot of people feel very passionately and strongly about who's going to be president, or who's going to be your senator, or your governor, even your state rep. But nobody really thinks about who the judge is going to be, right? We're not we're the redheaded stepchild of the ballot. We're the ones kind of left to the side and see, you're an afterthought, unfortunately. But judges touch on more aspects of your life than the president ever will.
Yeah.
An executive order is going to have very little on you, effect on you, on your lifetime. The laws passed by Congress that affect regulation and commerce, and I mean, I'm already losing people when I start talking about that, right? But yet, voters put a lot more emphasis on knowing who they're voting for president or for Congress, but not judges. And judges have the power to take away your freedom. They have the power to take away your kids, the power to take away your property, and that's everyday life. So you should really care. And Texas is one of the few states where judges are being elected. In a lot of other places in the federal court system and in other states, they're appointed. So voters actually have the opportunity that nowhere else in the U.S., very few places, to actually learn about the people that are going to be a judge on their courts, who are going to be the people that are going to be in charge of that case when, unfortunately, when your family falls apart and you can't come to an agreement on how you're going to pick up the pieces and what's going to happen with the kids, or who's going to make a decision about bail on people that pose a threat to the community, where you've had judges in places like Houston where they'll just release certain individuals with extensive criminal histories and that pose a threat to the community, just leave them out on PR bonds. So it's extremely important that voters take the time to learn about judges.
A good heart, it's not red and it's not blue. And you, my friend, have a good heart, and I wish you the best in your election. And I hope to see I hope to see you on the 13th Court of Appeals. However, I hope none of my cases ever get appealed. but I hope to see you there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
For joining us. And how can people follow your campaign?
Well, usually everything's on Facebook, right? At Judge Fonseca. That's the handle. At Judge Fonseca, and the website's judgefonseca.com. So keep it simple.